Serious, military or police service members of Reddit, what are the most spooky unexplainable things to have happened to you in your career? More on the unexplainable side. So I was in Afghanistan around 2011-2012, and we're all watching the Predator feeds because it's the start of the shift and no patrols had kicked off yet. We see one had tracked a motorcycle carrying 3 people, one with a bag over their head and facing backwards. We're all getting anxious because we know it's a kidnapping and we might see this poor guy get murdered. Sure enough, they led him out to the woodline. Afghanistan is not a desert unlike what the media portrays, and have him kneel down. They wait 5 minutes, then pick him back up onto the bike. They end up in the closest town and we're getting more anxious now because they stop in the middle of the town and push him up against the wall. Then this ice cream cart is pushed into view. The guys take the hood off and hand the kidnapped guy the ice cream cart. Then he goes around the town selling ice cream. I was J4 for my squadron and securing lodging for an upcoming op in northern Afghanistan. We went to a compound with 2 large towers, inside them hundreds of rooms for our guys. My job was to inspect all the rooms to make sure they had beds, pillows, Thing is, this is northern Afghanistan and this compound has been abandoned for years. Not even Afghans are around here. Since there were 2 towers, we had security check the area for people. Once it was confirmed no one was there, I split off from my SGT to inspect the rooms. I was on the 3rd floor going room to room, whistling and inspecting when a door slammed. I freaked. I yelled stop and pointed my gun. No respond. I yelled again. No response. Fear is in my voice. A round is in the chamber. I back away, and as I'm making my way to the stairs another door slams. I freaking scramble. I don't know what's up there but I wasn't sticking around. Grabbed my SGT, and we both check it out. There is nothing there. No wind. No people. Nothing. To this day I don't know what was up there, but I stopped going anywhere alone after that. Coast Guard was standing helm lookout watch on a ship in the middle of the Bering Sea, completely isolated for miles around. While standing the helm watch, steering the ship, we got a sudden, very pronounced radar blip behind us. The officer of the deck rang up to the lookout, who reported seeing something making a wake, but it disappeared. Due to the shape of the superstructure, the lookout's fixed big eyes binoculars were blocked directly aft by the exhaust stacks. The radar blip disappeared too. Our only guess was that it was a Russian or US submarine that popped up to the surface and then dove again. Gave me a chill to know that we weren't as alone as I had thought. Saw a weird orange ball flying around the night sky in Iraq once. Hella weird. Pretty sure that's the sun. I was a dispatcher for a few years. One night, on our closed radio channel, came the sound of static and a person mumbling something. At first, there was too much static to hear what was being said. This continued for a few seconds at a time for an hour or 2. Eventually, my co-worker and I were able to pick 2 words out of the static. Help me. Everything that is broadcasted over the radio is recorded, as well as logging which officer's radio made the broadcast. But when my co-worker and I went back to look for the recordings and logs, nothing was there. Nobody outside of our department should have had access to the channel. Apparently, this happens to a few dispatchers at the department every now and then, and the eerie voice always eludes being recorded. I work in corrections. From the CCTV monitors in the supervisor's control booth you can see onto some of the inmate housing unit control booths where my deputies sit and observe the inmates. One night, I was watching the above mentioned monitors and saw my deputies sitting in the control booth. Called him and asked him who was in the control booth with him. He said no one, which no one should have been because there was an emergency call that everyone had gone to. The thing is, I could clearly see someone standing behind him. I watched the figure stand there while he walked around looking for what I was talking about. As soon as he sat down and picked the telephone back up, it disappeared. As soon as I could, I went back to review the security footage to show him what I was talking about. The figure was not there on the recorded footage. Think about it every time I see that camera angle on the monitor, and I get the chills every time to this day. Was 6 years ago. When I was in the Navy I worked in aviation. During my deployment I was on the flight deck during the day once. Now the Navy is super protective of the flight space over aircraft carriers. Nothing comes close without alert jets taking off. One morning I look up and we all see this aircraft. red star in the vertical stab, just cruising along directly above the deck. They always tell us how the Russians are always testing our airspace and how we always react. But that aircraft was just chillin', few thousand feet above our flight deck. US Navy Submariner for 8 years. One time I fell asleep on the sub, which there is very little time for, and I was so exhausted I dreamt of what I would later tell my friend the dreamfish. The dreamfish attaches itself to our sub when we dive deep enough, and uses some kind of brainwave ability to influence our dreams and read our thoughts, during which, while we fully realize and understand that the fish is influencing our dreams, it even communicated, "I dreamed," not through words, just like emotional suggestions. It was the craziest, weirdest dream I have ever had. Now, I fully believe this is not a real thing, but I've had subsequent dreamfish dreams. Only when we were below a certain depth, I'd wake up and figure out what depth we were at during my time of sleep, which I wouldn't have bothered to know before sleeping. Does this fish exist? Probably not. Fall asleep beneath the ocean waves and see if it finds you, as well. When in the RAF I was based at Scampton. This was the base where the Dambusters raid was launched from and a bomber command airfield during the war. I was on guard duty one night and had a phone call around 2 AM about noises coming from one of the hangars. Sent a guard to investigate. He radios back and says he can hear voices mumbling and what sounds like machinery operating and tools clanging etc etc. I got out the keys to the hangar and on driving up sure enough there were such noises going on and the occasional flickering light. We called in the RAF police dogs but the land shark refused to go in. This highly trained attack dog lay down, whimpered and refused to listen to its handler. I went in with the guard and the RAF policeman and can only describe the feeling on entering the hangar floor as being surrounded in a cold fog that you couldn't see and a real feeling of dread. There was a real feeling of unhappiness in the place. I have never felt like that since, nor do I ever want to. We hightailed it out as it was secure and there was clearly no one there. Found out about a year or so later, when speaking to some visiting Bomber Command veterans, that it was a hangar used in the war for battle repairs on the damaged aircraft and sometimes were aircraft which had crew members killed in them, and sometimes it took some time to either extract their bodies or gather up the bits, would be taken to be cleaned. I have been back to Scampton since but I give that hangar a very wide berth. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, one of my frequent tasks was to help the guy flying the Raven, small UAV with an IR camera on it, at night, looking for insurgents planting bombs in the roads. Usually pretty boring. One night however, we noticed a circular hot spot in the corner of the camera's view. After flying around a bit to get a better view, me and the operator were wondering what in the heck this featureless hot sphere was. In white cold black hot, this thing was solid, darkest black, and was unmoving for about 5 minutes, after which it rapidly moved down, nearly to the ground. We were flying at about 160 featuring AGL, then back up into the sky and out of range of the Raven. We called up the TOC about this UFO. They said it must have been a glitch. They had nothing on satellite view in that area. When we went back to review the footage, kept on a specialized Tubac laptop, the 5 minutes with the UFO in it were missing. So my first assignment was to good ole Usag Yongsan in Korea. It was originally an Imperial Japanese Army base, back when the Japanese were ravaging their way through the Korean peninsula. If I recall correctly, the 8th Army HQ still had an Imperial chrysanthemum on it somewhere. But anyways, on one of the less well-traveled corners of the base, sat what I think was a storage building for the hospital or something. Anyways, this building had huge tall walls surrounding it, and used to be some kind of special hospital when the Japanese were there. All kinds of stories about staff duty officers coming by to do checks and running into spooky crap. Me personally, I was pulling overnight guard in the United Nations Command HQ on Yongsan. About 3-4 years prior, one of our NCO's, non-commissioned officers, had come up to the guard, asked for his weapon, and taken it to the gazebo out back and shot himself in the dome piece. So anyways, the building has automatic front door and cameras watching the outside of the door. My friend and I see a dark shadowy figure coming up the ramp to the door at about 2 AM and we're like probably the SOG, sergeant of the guard. Frick. So I step out of the guard post to brief him, and my buddy stays inside watching the camera. The automatic doors open, both the inside and outside ones, and there's nobody there. So in my mind I'm thinking great, the SOG is trying to mess with us. So I pop outside the building and look around a bit, but there's nobody there. So I went back inside and asked my friend where the dude went, and he gave me a stupid look and told me that he watched him enter the building. We discussed what had happened, and came to the conclusion that it was the ghost of that Nko doing some phantom SOG rounds, and I refused to pull night shift in that building ever again. While I was stationed in Cherry Point, I had the duty of inspecting the Marines barracks on Thursday morning after field day. Most rooms were normal. Dust bunnies here, scum stain there, but one day I stumbled across something disturbing. I went through one Marine's room. He was a heavy cat, and I noticed his wall locker was unlocked. Whenever I see unlocked wall lockers, I would go through them just for kicks. Well, this devil had somehow accumulated about 20 pairs of women's underwear. Some were even marked. When confronted, SNM stated, "It's not a crime to have women's thongs. Turns out, it is when you steal it from the laundry room." So, on watch one night me and my buddy were joking around. We were given strict orders not to go beyond the ECP, for any reason. Seems fair. Well, about 20 minutes into the watch we both start shivering despite it being a warm and humid night. Maybe another 15 minutes and we hear a blood-curdling scream from the woods about 10 yards from the post. I'm talking, it sounded like a woman was being stabbed, over and over again. It was at least 10 seconds of straight screaming. When morning came around, we asked, and we were told no one was out and no one was supposed to be in the area except for our guys. A building way out on the north side of our base was abandoned. Water leaked in and caused mold or whatnot to grow, the kind that would get in your lungs and make you very sick. So no one had been working in this building for decades. All the office furniture was removed, phones and everything. Building was just empty. It was also partially underground. I had walked into the building before while on post with some other co-workers. It was really spooky. Never went downstairs. Building number was 472. So fast forward a few years later, I'm working as a desk sergeant dispatch for patrol at about 3 in the morning. 911 line goes off. Screen says BLDG 472. I'm like freak the frick out. My alpha, she freaks the frick out. I pick up the phone. 911, what is the nature of your emergency? Click. We send a patrol out immediately. He's like F that when we tell him where the call came from. He gets out there. Pitch black. Nothing. No lights, no nothing. He snoops around. Doors are locked, all secured. Don't know to this day how it happened, but 911 calls came out of that building about the same time every few months. The building was demolished and filled in several years back and no calls from the BLDG since. My fiance has a really good one from when he was at West Point, the military academy. So there's a lot of haunted parts of West Point since it's so old, and tons of legends, ghost stories told by the cadets from over the years. It was during the summer, and the place was basically empty. He was on night duty for one of the oldest barracks on the campus. All night long, he kept hearing someone walking around on one of the floors above him, and when he would go up and check it out, this one room would have a light turned on. He kept turning off the light, locking the door, and then would go back down to his desk on the main floor. He said at first, he thought someone was just messing with him, but then it started getting really annoying. So around 2 AM, he gets a phone call from someone, a brigade commander or something. This guy starts screaming at him on the phone, "Cadet, I'm looking at Scott Barracks." Not sure if it was actually Scott, but for the story's sake, it's Scott Barracks right now, and I see a light on the 3rd floor. Go take care of that light. So my fiance, fed up at this point, goes upstairs again, unlocks the room door, and turns off the light again. An hour later, he gets another call. "Cadet, this is Lieutenant Colonel Mayer and I'm looking at Scott Barracks and that light on the 3rd floor is still on. I want you to go turn it off and then meet me at Thayer Statue to explain why you can't follow basic orders." Thayer Statue was a common meeting point for cadets, so after going up to the 3rd floor one again, my fiance makes his way to the statue to get chewed out by this lieutenant colonel and explain that the light kept going on even after he turned it off. At this point he was super creeped out and it was really late, like 3 AM. So he made one of his friends come with him so that they could both explain to this brigade commander what was going on. They get to the statue and wait. No one comes. They keep waiting. because the last thing they want is to get in trouble for not waiting for a lieutenant colonel on top of the light. After an hour, no one came. They decide to leave. The next morning, he decided to tell his company commander what happened with the light, and mentioned that Lieutenant Colonel Mayer had called them and then never showed up to their statue to talk. The company commander turned pale, looked at my fiance, and asked him if he was sure it was Lieutenant Colonel Mayer who had called. My fiance was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." He yelled at me twice and made me walk to meet him at 3 AM. About it, apparently, a decade earlier, a Lieutenant Colonel Mayer had committed suicide in those barracks in that room on the 3rd floor. So my fiance swears up and down that his ghost had called him that night and had kept turning on the lights in that room. I served in the SAF as a combat medic and was tasked to lead the medical support team for a training course in Brunei. Due to one of my medics falling sick out in the field, I had the privilege of taking his place and spending the night with an officer and a warrant officer, WO, on a narrow ridgeline in Mt. Bayang, which was apparently a navigation exercise checkpoint for the trainees. As night fell, we were warned by the officer to refrain from sleeping in the middle of the ridgeline as we ran the risk obstructing the path of any wandering spirits. Out of respect, we took the advice and constructed our hammocks as close to the sides of the ridgeline as we dared. Being a light sleeper, I kept being roused by the sound of the occasional heavy footstep walking by, crunching on the dead leaves and sticks on the ground. The footsteps sounded human, but at that point of time at night, nobody was supposed to navigate the mountain in pitch black. The next morning, my auditory experience was validated when all three of us found fresh tracks, too big to belong to any animal, on the ground that appeared in inconsistent intervals. It's not really too spooky, but my unit was in New Mexico for training for 2 months at White Sands. We were shooting a night range, and it looked like someone had turned on a decently bright light, and of course everyone got mad because it fricks without NVGS. Well, then there was what sounded like the loudest clap of thunder I've ever heard, and everyone looked up and stopped shooting. A giant meteorite had just passed through the atmosphere and blew up and lit the entire sky up as bright as day. Swiss military, they lost 14 kilograms of C4. Never found it, but it's out there somewhere. On a routine patrol on my Coast Guard cutter in the Eastern Pacific, late at night a few hundred miles offshore, I'm on the helm and the late night bridge watch conversations are the usual. People telling a few spooky stories. The radio crackles suddenly and everyone shuts up, since it's monitoring channel 16, which is international hailing and distress. We get static for 20 or 30 seconds, then singing. Someone is singing nonsensibly into their radio. It stops after a while and we all kind of freak out. Later in the watch the bridge windshield wipers turned on their own. The ocean at night is weird. Taking a manual weather observation at night at Gunsan, Korea. See a meteor explode, not just fizzle out. Go in and check some meteor observing sites. None of them had recorded it. Check back a week later, still nothing. Not spooky, but I can't explain it. You have been spotted by the rare flying floofer. If you comment good boy below, he don't steal your hot dogs anymore. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.